Okay, we're going to have a look at Shephard Fairey, who you may know as the Obey guy because the Obey t-shirt clothing line has become quite popular. So in the beginning, Obey Shephard Fairey started with this image that he got from an Andre the Giant poster. And if you may know Andre the Giant from the movies, but he originally was a wrestler and he was big, tall guy, but very much like a gentle sort of giant. But from this advertisement that he found, which is poorly done and probably found in a newspaper, what he did is he took that really stern look of Andre the Giant's face and he simplified it into making this stern looking face here. So he made this very simple sort of image, which he made into a stencil. And then he used the word obey to kind of go with that very stern look that would tell you, obey, listen to me. So it really doesn't necessarily relate to Andre the Giant at all, but this is something that Shephard Fairey did when he was in art school in Rhode Island. So Shephard Fairey was really into punk music. He was a skateboarder and he was an artist. So all the things he kind of was doing at that time were sort of like outside of society. So, punk rock was sort of like rebelling against the norms of society. Skateboarding was very much, outlawed. You can't skateboard on this certain property, this type of property. So very sort of rebellious way that he sort of began. So he started making these stickers and didn't necessarily have like a meaning behind them, but put them up everywhere. And the more he put them up, the more people started to talk about it, and then people started talking about it, and it gave them some sort of meaning. And he calls that concept phenomenology, which means that, the more an image is repeated, the more meaning it gets. And so he started a sticker campaign where he put the stickers up everywhere himself. He shipped them to other people. People put them up for him. So he had them everywhere and become very well known before this. So this was in the 80s. Now, and maybe early 90s when he was in art school. Now, that isn't a different concept from advertising, right? The more things are advertised, the more they're recognizable. Like we recognize the golden arches, right away as McDonald's, right? You don't even necessarily need to have the word McDonald's anymore. So quite often he'll have some of his images now with that obey underneath, and it will just be that image. And of course he translates that to different shapes and different things, or sometimes he just has the word obey. Now, some of his influences is Barbara Kruger, who worked earlier than Shephard Fairey, and she did a series of works where she was a feminist activist and a lot of critique sort of on consumer culture, the way that women are viewed. But what the idea is that black and white sort of images, and then the red font against the white background. But she worked very much in those sort of colors, red and white and black, and that sort of font, right? So she did a series of pieces so that I shop, therefore I am, is sort of making a play on our society. So Barbara Kruger was very much the way that the text is used to change meanings in images that are taken from everyday culture, which is what Shephard Fairey did. Now, something else I just want to throw in because it's really relevant to our culture right now, because you may not have heard of Barbara Kruger. Maybe you know a little bit about Obey, but you really don't know much about Shephard Fairey's background, but you do know something about Supreme. And Supreme is a very expensive sort of clothing line. I know they have skateboards and shoes and backpacks, and they're ridiculously expensive. And the thing is you can see very similar is that sort of white font against a red background, that type of font that they use. In fact, the Supreme font that they use is the same font as the Barbara Kruger font. And in fact, when you see Supreme, you might be thinking, oh, Shephard Fairey or Barbara Kruger is sort of copying off of Supreme, but that's not true. Supreme is actually totally copying off of Barbara Kruger. And of course, it's two different messages, right? I shop, therefore I am, and versus the ideas between Supreme. Like Supreme, it's just completely opposite to all the things that Barbara Kruger, as an activist about commercialism and what she believes in, right? Supremists take it to the other extreme where you have this t-shirt that I don't know how much it costs to make, but because it's branded with Supreme, they charge a fortune for it. So there has been, I mean, that's a totally different story, but there has been, Barbara Kruger has actually sued Supreme with their logos, but I mean, the way that they depict Supremes depicts women in some of their t-shirts are completely opposite than the feminist sort of route that Barbara Kruger has. So they're very much at odds. So but that type of font with the white and the red background is very strong in a lot of different sort of genres. I mean, what Supreme does have very similar to Obey is a clothing line and skateboards and things like that. But Supreme doesn't have any of those social political sort of messages that Barbara Kruger or Shephard Fairey is having. So what's kind of cool is the way that Shephard Fairey now gets out his messages is that at obeygiant.com is his website, and he has a list of all the work that he does, and he does, you know, exhibitions and galleries, he does street art, he does posters, he does his sticker campaigns. But one of the neat things he does is if you go there, there's actually free downloads. So you can download the stencils, you can download the stickers, you can download instructions on how to wheat paste stuff, and anything that you want to help you kind of help him spread his message. So he has a whole manifesto on what he believes in terms of art and street art and his message about Obey, and he makes that accessible for everyone to sort of, everybody else can share and spread his message. And again, spreading his message only gives it more meaning and more power to him, you know, and makes it more famous. And that's not very different from what graffiti is, you know. Again, it's quantity is what's really key. So that's where sort of graffiti and street art sort of tie into each other. So one of the things that Shephard Fairey is very famous for is one of his Hope posters that he did when Barack Obama was campaigning to be president. Actually, Obama hired him to make a poster, and so it's very similar to sort of the Obey idea, but instead he has Hope. And what he had done, he had taken a picture online that a photographer had taken of Obama, and he changed it and he made it his own style with his use of colors and his use of sort of stencil making, and created these posters. Now, you would think that it's a copyright violation, and in most cases, artists are allowed to do this, and the term is called appropriation. The image here on the right is of Marilyn Monroe, and this is something done by Andy Warhol in the 1950s and 60s, where, again, same tradition as Shephard Fairey, where he took images from everyday culture or popular culture, so for pop art, of Marilyn Monroe. He took an image that was poorly reproduced in a newspaper, and he made a silkscreen of it and made multiple images of it. So Shephard Fairey very much works in that tradition. So this is no different. However, there is that sort of blurred lines about using what sources you use, and he actually was sued for copyright violation from the original photographer, and he actually lost the case. Now, probably because this was such a well-known piece, probably that's the idea, but there's a lot of sort of parodies made of this Hope poster, and Shephard Fairey actually encourages you to sort of keep playing with that. So probably because maybe he was paid for this, that's why there was a copyright violation, but it's a very much a gray line. Normally, artists can take things from popular culture and then change them and make them their own, and it's called appropriation. So one of the other cool things that Shephard Fairey did is during Trump's inauguration, one of the rules for the inauguration is that you weren't allowed to hold signs larger than a certain size. So you weren't allowed to sort of bring them in. So one of the things that he had done is he had taken ads out in, I think, the Washington Post and other newspapers, and he took full page ads out of these 3 different images saying, "We the people." And so people could buy the newspapers and they were folded up. And then when they got to the inauguration, they could open them up and they could all hold them there. So it's another way of using sort of advertising to meet the masses of people, right, from simple advertising, and send a really powerful message and get your own message out there and get people in the crowd to sort of participate in your message. So he does his sticker campaign, he does his street art posters, and also he has t-shirts, which we'll look at in a second, and he's actually got some Obey masks, right? So he works very constantly and is very aware of what's going on sort of and society to sort of, and that's sort of key, right? You've got to, make comments on really what's happening in the world, because, I mean, you can keep making political comments on things that happened 20 years ago, but it's not going to be very relevant. So he stays very relevant with his work, and of course we've all seen sort of the Obey clothing line at Zoomies or Boathouse. And so the thing is that he has a very powerful image of Andre the Giant, and because of that, he's able to translate it to a variety of mediums, whether it's a sticker or a t-shirt or something on the internet or a poster or masks, or using that powerful image and then that idea behind it, you can keep making changes to it and keep changing the idea so it's still recognizable that it's Obey, but he can translate it to a bunch of different mediums. So he was in Toronto in 2014. He did a 7-city mural tour. So this was commissioned. So for those of you that haven't been able to go to Graffiti Alley, this is sort of just down one of the side alleys there. So this is a picture of when it was just done, and it's sort of faded a bit now. But Shephard Fairey was there, and he did this. So again, talking about Obey. So again, staying really relevant, he did these series of works right here that are called Angel of Hope and Strength, and it's a tribute to the frontline healthcare workers dealing with COVID-19. And he just released them, I think 20 days ago, these posters. And some, I think they're original silkscreen prints, so he can sell them for a bit of money, and he's selling them to fundraise for various organizations in and around Rhode Island, and I think also some global organizations. So this is how he's, as an artist, how he's dealing with global issues, right? How he, as an artist, can make change, either through showing artwork and making everybody sort of think, but also selling his artwork. Because a lot of people think that, with these t-shirt lines and everything, that he's getting paid for some stuff and maybe he's selling out, but his ability to be able to make a living as an artist not only gives him this ability to make a lot of amazing artwork, but also that sort of power of, although he might be against capitalism, but using the idea of capitalism to further his message and to make a change and make a difference in the world. So, and then of course what's really relevant right now is the murder of George Floyd and all of the riots that are happening right now. So he hasn't released a piece yet about that, and I imagine that's coming up. But this is his most recent post, actually, that he did. And he's been talking a long time about addressing issues of racism. And there's a whole bunch of a series of pieces that he's done in the past, and talking about, about how his art can be used as activism. Again, these are pieces that could be put up all over the place or fundraised for different money. So that's Shephard Fairey. He's done quite a bit of work. And again, what I encourage you to do is to look at obeygiant.com if this is something that you really like. Look at the different wide variety of artworks that he's done and shows. He's very open about talking about his work. There's lots of videos of him. He's got books out. He's a really, really neat, deep guy. And again, all that sort of started with this idea of, obey. And of course, looking at society, and do we blindly obey what advertisements do and what the governments tell us what is the truth, and just being an activist in your own sort of way about being able to make change and really what you believe in. So that's Shephard Fairey. Thanks.